All right, next up we have Stephen Stewart, CEO of QC Copper and Gold, Inc. QC Copper and Gold is a Canadian exploration company focused on developing its flagship Opemiska copper-gold project in Quebec's Abitibi region. Please welcome to the stage, Stephen.
Hey everyone, nice to be here yet again, another year in this conference. I want to thank Joanne for putting together such an amazing conference in a city that's very close to us, in a province that's very close to us. Of course, I'm here talking about QC Copper and Gold. As we say here, it's Canada's highest grade open pit copper project, and that's true. We're located in the heart of Quebec, and that's why we come here every year to fly our flag and tell the world how important that copper is, as all these gentlemen here were talking about, and they talked about geopolitics, and that's why we're in Quebec. My group, which I'll talk about in just a minute, a broader group, has made a bet, a 10-year bet on Canada, and specifically buying copper and gold projects. And our flagship that we have developed over that period is, as I said, a company called QC Copper and Gold, which owns the Opemiska. The Opemiska itself was operated by Falconbridge, which is now, of course, Glencore, and it produced a significant amount of the copper and gold that came out of Eastern Canada in the 20th century, came out of this mine, came out of this jurisdiction, which we're in the process of trying to give new life and reinterpret it and reinvigorate the community, the province, and Eastern Canada in terms of producing copper and gold again in a new format in terms of open pit. Before I get into the specifics of copper and talk more about the Opemiska and why you should buy shares of QC Copper and Gold, I'll talk a little bit about who we are. We are a part of the OR Group, which is a Toronto-based group. OR Group itself is private. I'm the sole shareholder and have been the key driver behind it. You see 7 publicly traded companies there and 1 private company there and a whole other private opportunities that we have acquired over the years. We're a very entrepreneurial group that started with 3 people and have grown to a team of probably close to 20 people now who work for us, but there's a lot more people that work for us on the project level. But we're a group, we're a vertically integrated group of entrepreneurs who acquire, develop, raise capital for projects. We identify an asset like the Opemiska. We identify an individual like a James Sykes, and we get behind them and we develop them. We build a company. We've got uranium in the Saskatchewan basin with baseload energy. We've got nickel, which is very unpopular right now in Manitoba, but we're going to double down on nickel. We've got gold in Ontario with Mustango River. American Eagle Gold has been a high flyer of late. We're a $100 million company there. We got Teck as a 20% shareholder. QC Copper, again, incredibly high-grade project. ORCAP, which is our public company expression of what the OR Group is. It holds equity positions in many of these companies here and others. We build positions in arm's length companies. It just gives us another tool in our tool bag to come at different challenges. And challenges I mean by acquiring and developing projects. And then Cuprum is analogous to QC Copper in the sense that it's the largest copper resource, but it's in Ontario. There are a lot of similarities, analogs to what Cuprum is relative to QC Copper, except it's a little earlier stage, but it's very, very large, nearly 2 billion pounds of copper on the rail, on the road, etc. We love good infrastructure. And then last but not least, although this is an outlier in our group, it's a Wally. And those following the gold space probably saw recently a drill to 45 gram per ton gold intersection over 35 meters. Not too bad. In fact, that's world class. So those are our group, and why I am talking about that group, because one of the themes that I've heard time and time again here is your ability to finance your activities. And that's something that we have shown time and time again. We've raised nearly, in fact, over $200 million in equity in the last 3 years. We've done $200 million in joint ventures with companies like Teck, Newmont, Agnico Eagle, etc. So we're a group that I think is credible, reputable, hardworking, honest, long-term shareholders, meaning we haven't sold a share in any. I'm the largest shareholder in virtually every single one of these companies. I've never sold a single share. I really hope that changes one day, but the point I'm trying to make is we are aligned with shareholders in what we do. We don't take on projects that don't have the ability to go to the end, and that means be a part of something that goes into production. We don't need to put it into production ourselves. We just need to be a part of it. So that's who we are. We raise capital, we develop projects, and I have to note that one of the common themes here across all of the talkers here is copper. Last year it was lithium, a year before that it was uranium, but now copper is back. But I have a little question mark there, because 30 days ago it was certainly back, maybe even less than that. It hit $5, and it became the commodity du jour. We had Jeff Curry from Goldman Sachs sort of top-ticking his calls. Jeff's a smart guy, but has had some bad luck on his calls lately. Nonetheless, the why I put this up there, and I hate talking about the commodity because really you got to get involved in the details of the project, but what I think from a retail investor standpoint, which is absolutely critical, is you have to have the narrative behind you. It's hard to make money in a $2 copper environment when even if you have a world-class project. So I think what investors need to know is that even though copper has pulled back in these last 2 weeks, which is totally healthy and normal because it ran too fast, too hard, the narrative around copper, and it's not just a story, but what people are talking about on Bloomberg and CNN and BNN and all that sort of stuff is that the supply and demand fundamentals of copper are real. And so the more they talk about it on those big outlets, the more that your average general investor, whether that's retail or sophisticated institutional investors, start thinking about it. And they should think about it, because the industry has literally destroyed capital for the past 13 years. There's exceptions to the rule, quite a few, but as a whole, on the aggregate, that's what happens, to the point where we are so cheap we can't be ignored. And I think the realities of how much metal we need to meet the demands, not just of our everyday life, but of these new themes, whether it's electrification, whether it's the power generation and supply to AI, whether it's, unfortunately, war. But we need metal. When we find it, it's deeper, it's lower grade, and it's more expensive. So there's going to be a price run in metal. The question is, can we keep up with the margins? Where I think you should pay attention to QC, I use it as an example here, even though, and others like us, the only people in the junior space that have moved on a share price perspective in the last little bit have been the high flyers. Companies like Awale, and I said hit that drill hole, or companies like American Eagle, which are drilling phenomenal drill holes, but everybody else who's in the sort of unsexy part of the Lassonde curve or doing infill drilling have just remained flat. So today you can buy a share of QC Copper at the same price as you could have before we published the highest grade copper resource in Canada, before copper ran north of $5. So the junior sector lag is still there, while I do think the indicators indicate that these prices are going to catch up. So there is an opportunity for people to buy value. And again, what is value? I think, again, I'll emphasize, this is the Opemiska relative to big company operations. And you can see there, we are at 0.8% copper, okay? If I were to cheat and use copper equivalent, which would include silver and gold, which are metallurgically sound in our calculations, because this was a former producing mine, we're up at 1%. Now, how many deposits in Canada that are open pit are 1%? Well, the answer is there are none. They used to mine that 15, 20 years ago in Chile, but now those mines have been degraded. So to have a 1% open pit copper deposit with access to infrastructure, base metal is so important to have access to infrastructure. We are on the rail. We are on the road. We have an airport right next to us. We are in a mature mining camp. This project is unique. It's overlooked, and it's undervalued. There's a reason it's undervalued here. I'm going to be the first to tell you, and I'm going to explain why. But the reason it is discounted is overcomable, and that's something that we're working very hard on to come through this year. But I just wanted to indicate, this is what the resource, we published this highest grade resource out in January of this year. It's 2.2 billion pounds, and it's going to grow. It's going to get bigger as we evaluate the underground scenario. Everything you see in blue is an underground scenario that has been excluded from our resource calculation, so that's not included in those numbers, but we know it's there. Why do we know it's there? Because it was mined in a previous generation. The mine shut down in 1991 when it was operated by Falconbridge. But it's a very high quality resource based on a million meters of knowledge have gone into the construction of this resource. 100,000 meters of it was done by us. Go to this slide here, because I think what we need to point out here is why are we a $30 million company? Why is QC Copper a $30 million company when it has a 2 billion pound, 1% copper deposit in the middle of Quebec? It's very simple. It's social license, okay? And that's a critical aspect in any project one is going to develop in Canada or frankly anywhere these days. But because we are in a brownfields environment, because this was a world-class mine, there's a town. There's a town right next to the deposit. And the question is, can QC Copper develop this mine? And the answer is yes, we can. But we have to do it very carefully. We have to do it in consideration with the local people. And the local people are primarily those who live in Chapet. And Chapet is a very beautiful town, a long history. Anybody who lived in Chapet, their uncles and their fathers and their mothers, all are associated with the mine. It's a mining culture. When the mine shut down in 1991, there was 5,000 people. Today, there's about 1,300 people. And without any injection of economic activity, I expect those numbers to continue to decline. However, they're fortunate enough to have this deposit, sizable high-grade deposit at their doorstep. Are we going to have impacts on the town of Chapet? Absolutely. There's going to be noise, dust, traffic. The minimum wage is going to go up. The bakeries are going to have to pay the bakers more money, et cetera. So there are all sorts of impacts that need to be considered. But at the end of the day, the net is going to be an extreme positive. We're going to give the townspeople a reason for their children to stay. I think that's the most important thing, is that they see a future. If we can give them a multi-decade potential, multi-generation operation at their doorstep, that reinvigorates the town of Chapet. Most people will know an analog. Everybody says, who's done this before? And I've seen at least two out of the three Cisco guys, and obviously a fourth, Brian Coates. So we got Brian, we got John, we got Bob, and who am I missing? Sean. All those guys I mentioned, if you follow this industry, you'll know the Malarctic, which is a perfect analog of what this project is and what we point to. Now, how are we going to overcome these challenges? Well, obviously, that's getting the town on side. Now, first of all, I can tell you anecdotally, they are on side, because if they didn't want us there, it would be over. We have been invited into their community to build this mine. Now, we don't take that invitation for granted. We pay very close attention and we listen, and we're there at least twice a year on a town hall basis, and every month we're in the mayor's office giving them an update. So they want us there. This year, part of our core focus is going to be officially getting them there, getting an agreement, a formal agreement in place with the town. That's something that I'm very interested in achieving. I think that will help to mitigate the perceived risk of whether these guys can build that mine. And if we do overcome that hump, I don't think the days of us being a $30 million market cap company should be behind us. Then, of course, we need to move forward to the engineering. We've done this resource, and the resource is just a function of the geology. We have to show that we can extract this resource in an economic basin at a good margin. But I always say that the highest grade open pit copper deposit in the middle of Quebec, on the road, if that doesn't work, what does? It's a simplistic statement, but it's a good place to start. And we'd honestly, I don't think there's a project anywhere, certainly not in Canada, that has this access to infrastructure. What else are we doing? Growth, okay? So aside from the engineering, we need to grow this deposit. The good news is 2.2 billion pounds is only 2 out of the 4 mines that Falconbridge operated. There is the Cook and the Robitaille. And if I go back to this slide here, if you squint, you can see on the west side, those are the two deposits where all the copper resources are located. On mines 3 and 4 just to the east of them. They're very proximate. Those are the 3rd and 4th mine. We are rinsing and repeating the data process in terms of understanding the geology, validating the historic geology. Then we're going to introduce a drill program which is going to expand and get bigger. Bigger is usually better in the mining industry, certainly in this instance it is. And then I'll note beyond that, in this district, in Chibougamau is a district there. You can see those are all other mines. They're not necessarily our mines, but there's other deposits there. Deposits which we believe are not standalone, but certainly become accretive to us if we can define that we've got one of the highest grade deposits there that justifies a mill, then that changes everything. So, as my time is done, I'll quickly note, I'm going to steal an extra 30 seconds, and I'm just going to tell you that one of our private companies is a company called Cuprum. Okay, Cuprum means copper in Latin, and Cuprum is analogous to the Opemiska. So everything that I told you in a nutshell there about Opemiska, brownfields, access to infrastructure, railroad, power, etc. We acquired Cuprum out of a distressed situation at the end of last year. QC Copper owns 10% of it, and we're evaluating our options. It's something that shareholders should keep their eye on in terms of mergers and acquisitions for QC Copper. That's something that I've said in the past, that we may very well look to roll that into QC Copper. We have some drill results coming out for Thierry, but it would be awfully nice to have 4.5 billion pounds of copper within one company in Eastern Canada. So that's, again, something speaking to the ore group, speaking to what we do. We're acquirer of good assets. We solve problems. We raise capital. We put good people in charge of our projects. And then we put ourselves in front of the wave, in front of the wave, a changing paradigm, what's coming to the mining and metals industry. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I know it's going to happen in the next few years. Maybe I'll be surprised, maybe it's this year. But when it does, our group, QC Copper, Ore Group, and all of our companies will be owning great assets, well-financed in the best mining jurisdiction in the world, which is Canada. And this is a forward-looking statement at the very end. And if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask me any more questions, again, my name is Stephen Stewart, and I'm the CEO of QC Copper and Gold. Thank you.